listening to the ProgAxia podcast.
Hi everybody, it's Andy here and welcome to the ProgAxia podcast. As you can see, I've got Malcolm and Mark with me from Hats Off, Gentlemen, It's Adequate. Hi guys.
Hello. Thanks for having us, Andy. Thank you.
Now, first question is got to be Hats Off, Gentlemen, It's Adequate. It's a great name for a band. Where the hell did that come from?
Malcolm.
Okay, I understand it can be a bit divisive. It's not very practical in terms of fitting on a poster or in anything like that. But on the other hand, if you do search for that band name under Google, not much else comes up. So there's some benefit. The image in my head at the time was the idea of these Edwardian or Victorian gentlemen throwing their hats in the air and shouting huzzah, not because something was amazing, but the idea of because it being right in the middle, average, which I must admit doesn't fit with our music. Somebody once complained, oh, we didn't sound steampunk, and we've never claimed to be steampunk. That sounded like that. That's what they're expected, and we were able to provide them with disappointment. But I think the name has a kind of quirky British self-deprecating thing that kind of fits us a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely got that sort of side to it, isn't it? It doesn't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, because I had this sort of image in my head of, you know, sitting in a recording studio, finishing a track and listening to the mix at the end of it and sort of, you know, saying, well done, gentlemen, that's adequate. It's like, it is beautifully British self-deprecation, you know. It's like, yes, that's absolutely adequate.
Well, the nice thing about it is as well, it doesn't really sort of take you down one route or another route as to what we might sound like, you know. So it's kind of, it's not suggesting that we're going to be this or this, because our music's not one particular thing. You know, our music's varying different genres all mixed up together. So I think that the name is good for that as well. It doesn't sort of suggest a particular, you know, we're not death metal, you know.
Yeah, because sometimes names can just, like, you know, you sort of, when you put in a band together, it brands you, doesn't it? It doesn't, it's a beautiful name that fits a great band. You know, I think it's a really good name for the band. It sort of fits it perfectly. How did you guys get together? I mean, there's only two of you in the bands. Obviously, when you do live stuff, you're going to have other musicians on stage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How did you guys get together?
We're old school friends. We literally go back to, crikey, 11, 12 years old. Maybe a bit after that, but, you know, we were secondary school together. Yeah, many moons ago. And, you know, first school bands, literally. First band I ever played in was with Malcolm. And we became, you know, we've been friends ever since, really. You know, we sort of grew up and got different careers and different families and that sort of thing. But we always kept in touch, you know, because we're mates anyway. But also we'd have a musical, you know, affiliation with each other. And we've always played well together and sort of bounce off each other really well. So, you know, we've never lost that side of it, really.
Yeah, I mean, we used to jam together in school lunch breaks and things. And I think we've just, musical communication between us is very, very easy and natural. And I think, having played on and off together for quite a few decades does help with that. We both play a variety of instruments, and in our live shows, we try not to include. Well, we don't really include anything on our albums that we couldn't actually play. We also, on some of the tracks, my wife Catherine, who's a classical flautist, plays as well. She plays us for some of our live gigs. But apart from the flute, you know, whatever we play is stuff that we can play, although we can't do it all at the same time live. So Mark also brings along a laptop to help us out with the we kind of do the fiddly bits, the twiddly bits, and the computer does the bits that aren't too difficult but we don't have enough arms to do at the same time.
So how do you sort of describe the music? What were you going for when you started putting this thing together? Because you've been going for, what is it, 2012 was the first album?
Yeah, I mean, Malcolm, give a bit of insight how the band started, because I mean, you were doing solo gigs, weren't you?
Yeah, I got a bit distracted from. I mean, I was always very passionate about music, but I got a bit distracted from it when I was being a doctor, and but then I took part in a hospital pantomime where I had a couple of songs, and I got some nice feedback there that encouraged me to actually get back to playing, and so I started doing open mic nights, and then that gradually built up, and then getting solo gigs, and then Mark came to some of my solo gigs, and I think it sounded maybe better than you'd feared, and that then
It started off, and I was coming down as a couple of gigs you played in Upper Street in Islington. And I remember coming down and you said to me, "Oh, next time you come down, why don't you bring a bass with you and just sit in on this tune?" I'm like, "All right, okay, here we go." And of course, no rehearsal, because we just don't do that sort of thing, because we've been playing for so long anyway. Sat down, played the tune, sounded really good, got some good feedback from that, looked at each other and went, there's probably some legs in this somewhere. And then Malcolm had started, you started writing songs at that point, didn't you? Or you had a backlog of songs that you were maybe...
I've been writing songs for a while, but just not really doing anything with them. And then I started, being interested in actually going out and playing.
Yeah, I mean, the first couple of Hats Off albums didn't really have me on there. I mean, I came in later on in terms of adding my bits to stuff, so I was probably on from third album onwards, I think, in terms of what I was bringing to the party.
You were on all the albums, but, as you were saying, or as a kind of adding things to tunes that were largely completed, rather than being involved, from the beginning of the album, which I much prefer when we're actually working on things together at the beginning. That's much fun.
Yeah, it's actually good to sort of bounce ideas off each other and things like that, isn't it?
Especially the way we do now. I mean, we don't really meet up too much in terms of physically meet up too much. We're in different parts of London, but we sort of share files, we Dropbox files backwards and forwards. So Malcolm will have a song, or bare bones of a song, and then he'll send it across to me, and I'll go, "Oh, this could do with bass most of the time, because that's what I mainly play, or maybe some keyboards or some stick or some shaky percussion or whatever." And then I'll send a load of files back, usually too many files back, and then Malcolm can go, "That's great, I won't use that one, that could be for something else." And so, because again, we're old friends, there's no ego involved, so if stuff doesn't get used, it doesn't get used. But then it might take the song in a different direction instead. So there's a collaborative effort. So in terms of lockdown, it didn't really affect us in terms of how we go about a day-to-day, hats off songwriting session or whatever. We can still send songs backwards and forwards. It's only when it gets close to doing live gigs that we then sit in a rehearsal room and go, right, how are we going to play this live? And then we sort of have 2 rehearsals and then just go and do it anyway. It'll be fine, I'm sure.
So about influences and sort of how you get together, and I mean, it's interesting to sort of think about the sort of roots of music. What sort of music has influenced you, Malcolm, over the years to sort of get you to the point of writing the sort of music you write?
So on the rock side, and then on the classical side, because I also do classical music as well, and I've got a background as my classical instrument was the tuba. And that's what I kind of learned basic music on. The other things I do are kind of by ear, but the tuba was what I actually had lessons in. So on the rock side, Marillion and Pink Floyd were, and still are, big inspirations. And then on the classical side, the minimalists like Steve Reich and contemporary classical music.
What about you, Mark?
So in terms of...
I mean, again, Marillion was a big kind of joint influence for us. I think we bonded a lot on Marillion. I remember going to Marillion gigs with Malcolm as well, and the spectacle of it and just the scale and that sort of thing. Queen and Iron Maiden growing up was massive for me. I mean, still are. I mean, Queen, but I love people like Bowie and Kate Bush and even New Order and kind of 80s synth pop. I've got that kind of thing, and a lot of indie stuff. So that's why a lot of Hats Off stuff seems to come from different places, because it does come from different places. We're not stuck in a kind of classic prog tradition.
Yeah.
Again, Malcolm's saying he'll bring in classical stuff. If you listen to the album or any of the albums, there's always a lot of classical influenced things that sort of shift through the songs as well. So it's not strictly, rock stuff. And there'll be some dancey stuff on there as well, and a lot of electronica, because, I remember listening to Jean-Michel Jarre when I was younger and just loving synthesized sounds and that sort of side of stuff as well. So non-guitar-y music, and that's also had an impact. So yeah, we just pick and choose from anywhere we like, really, which is nice, because we're not expected to then write a particular style of song. It's more about what does this song need to sound like, rather than, we need to write another 20-minute massive guitar solo thing. So.
Oh, sorry.
I know. Don't worry, you'll get a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, live. Malcolm will bring a guitar, and that's we do generally play the rockier, guitar-ier stuff live. Because of Malcolm said, because there's two of us traveling about, so we can't bring a whole load of synths and everything else with us. We'd love to. I mean, we could do an amazing show with like a 16-piece band, and break down every single element with someone playing it live, which would be a lovely thing to do. But we can't. I mean, the band has been up to 5 people. Malcolm, was it at one point?
Yeah,
before
5 people. Just.
We had a band with a drummer and another guitar player, and we were kind of we did that for a little bit, but it's just trying to get everyone in the same room at the same time. It's that classic thing. And we found that just the two of us, we could just be somewhere at the drop of a hat. So if we get, a phone call saying, can you do this gig tomorrow? We can go, yep. And we'll just get on a train with everything we can carry and go and do it. And that's how we've kind of been getting our leg up, is being available at very short notice.
And there's not many bands can sound like a prog band within 15 minutes of turning up at the venue. We are pretty quick to sound check and set up, compared with if you had 15 different toms and massive load of cymbals and things. In terms of what's practical and works for us, our setup at the moment means we can play a lot, and we both love performing. But if you had real people for every part that we've got on our albums, it would just cost so much to put on a gig that it would be implausible for considering the number of people who might actually want to pay to see it. But as we are, actually works really well for us.
Because one of the things I sort of, when I started listening to the album that I sort of came in on was your last one, and then started listening back to some of the back catalogue. But Nostalgia for Infinity, the last album, was exactly that one. If you're watching on YouTube, it's that one. It sort of struck me as there was, I couldn't really sort of, with a lot of bands, when I'm talking to a lot of bands, you can sort of go, yeah, they're really into Pink Floyd, or they're really into this, or they're really into that. With you, it just sort of, as you go through the tracks, there's no sort of pinpoints. It just sounds completely different. And I think that was what sort of struck me as I want to talk to these guys, because I want to find out where your influences come from. But more than that, it's so good to just sort of have a completely fresh palette and just say, this is a brand new band, completely different sort of attitude to what a lot of bands do. So was that sort of a way of doing something? Did you sort of say to yourselves, we want to be a complete clean slate and we want to do whatever we want? Is that the way it went?
We've never discussed it. It's not ever been a conscious decision. It is, it's literally how those songs will not write themselves, but you know what I mean? A certain story or a certain song will just suggest a certain way of playing it.
Right.
And it's nice not to have, as I say, we're basically like we're a pair of sponges, is what we are. We're musical sponges. So we just soak up everything we like, and then that all just comes back out into Hats Off. And we don't, feel need to be constrained by, oh no, we're only a metal band, so we can't write a lovely piano ballad with some strings on it. Well, we can, because we're not that. We're just a
It
band.
just basically gives you the freedom.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And hopefully it still hangs together as sounding like us, even though we draw from such disparate sources. You can still tell it's a Hats Off thing, because there's still a thread that runs through it. I think so anyway. I hope so.
On the writing side, one of the things I wanted to sort of just have a look at on the writing side, and probably this may be you, Malcolm. When you're putting these tracks together, what's the sort of inspiration for the songs, the actual conception of the tracks? Because it looks like there's a lot of sort of bit of science fiction in there and other sort of things. What's the conception of those tracks?
So I suppose this feeds into what you were saying with the last point, in that for us, rather than starting with a sound and then writing, starting with your own sound and then you go off to write the songs, it's more the sound serves the song and the song serves the album. So the albums have they're not necessarily linear narrative concept albums, although one kind of was and did follow a story, but they at least have some kind of theme and a structure. And we will start off with some songs that then suggest a structure, but for us the structure of the album is really important, and we may sometimes be writing a track to fit a certain part of a narrative or a theme. So I'm not answering this very well.
Well, I mean, does it come from things like, I saw somewhere that you have something about books. You sort of, some of the tracks have come from some of the books you've read and things like that.
Yeah, so the concept often comes first. Not always, but often it's like on Nostalgia for Infinity, the overall theme is fragility of civilization. So it's a fairly broad theme. Within that, there's a group of songs that are all related to books by science fiction writer Alastair Reynolds, which deal with that theme. And then there are other tracks that deal with the same theme from different perspectives, but hopefully with a flow to the album so that it's not too disjointed and has a structure to it. For our next album, for example, the theme we're working on is overconfidence, excessive certainty, and the dangers of that in life and politics. And the songs all have relate to that theme. The first one I did was relating to invisible disabilities, which is, I've got a type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is one of the reasons why we don't have huge banks of equipment and synthesizers and stuff on stage, because I'm very much restricted in what I can carry. So it's to some extent how we work is a pragmatic compromise that we can do what we want to do within our physical limitations. But that first album was about my experience of chronic pain and invisible disability. Second one was a story about artificial intelligence. Third one was something else. What was that? Evolution. And the theme of that was, when people are thinking about evolution, we think about competition. But I think, and this relates also to some of the stuff I used to lecture about as a doctor, we underappreciate the importance of cooperation as a factor in evolution. And so this was an album that basically followed evolution from the beginning of life through to collaboration with artificial intelligences. Then the one after that was about memory from a variety of perspectives.
Yeah.
Some from a science, some in relation to my medical background with stuff about Alzheimer's disease, and some in relation to our inability to learn from experience in history.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was right. I mean, if that's one way you can probably hang the progressive tag on us, is because the albums so far do have overarching themes that hang the whole thing together, but then the tracks work as individual songs. Hopefully, I am very much of the thing that I like it to be listened to as an album. We spend a lot of time sitting down and sequencing the songs in the right order, so they have got a start, middle, and end as a flow. But you can still take them apart and do radio edits as singles if you want to. But I like the idea of someone sitting down with a pair of headphones on, a glass of wine or whatever, and sitting in it and go, right, let's go into this world, and take the whole thing in. Doesn't mean to say that at some point in the future we'll just do an album of just completely separate songs. But up to this point, and including the one we're working on now, they do seem to have big themes that sort of glue them all together.
Yeah, I think that's what makes these sort of things. That's what makes this sort of music interesting, as far as I'm concerned. I think a lot of fans like that sort of stuff where they can get a grasp of something a little. There's something a little larger to this than just it isn't just a tune. It's something a little larger, something more in the background, something a little bit more thought through, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I love throwaway 3-minute pop songs. I mean, I love them to bits. But writing our sort of stuff, it's really nice to get your teeth into it and sit down and think things through and kind of, okay, what does it need here to maybe illustrate that part of the story more?
Just to round up then, guys, then what is the sort of future for you guys? Where are you going with this now? What next album obviously coming up?
Next album number 6 is do you know what? Musically, most of it's there. We as soon as Nostalgia was released, we were already working on number 6, and a lot of it is done. What we're looking forward to now is when we can finally meet up again and actually do meet up face to face, and then we'll do some vocals, finish off some vocals, and then we can start mixing. And that's the part I enjoy most working with Malcolm, is when we're sat in a room together and we're just going through kick drum sounds, which sounds boring, but it's where I feel like a musician properly, and we're doing that collaborative thing where we're kind of going, right, okay, what does that need? Or that sounds great, or let's maybe do this a bit here. And mixing and that sort of thing, I think, we get a lot of stuff done a lot quicker when we're both in the same room as each other, rather than Malcolm trying to sort of do it himself and then send things backwards and forwards to me to check. So next album due, I'm going to say autumn this year, maybe winter this year. In terms of other things, live, we have got some gigs booked and lined up, which is lovely. We are doing Prog Forest in July. Malcolm, is that correct? If you're still there, which is a thing that Malcolm organises with Chris Parkins from London Prog Gigs, which is a festival we put on. So all things being well, the venue still being open, because it's the Fiddler's Elbow in Kentish Town. So if that's still going on after the pandemic,
it's a great venue.
It's a great venue. It's a great venue, and I think for both of us, that's been the thing we've missed most. Throughout all this is obviously lack of live music and bands and just meeting up with people. And that sort of social side of being a musician as well. I've really missed that.
I played Fiddler's Elbow. I think it's a great venue. It just sort of feels so tight as well. Fiddler's Elbow. It's like you don't have to have that many people in there for it to really rock.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's and that's the sort of venue that we really enjoy playing as well. We love playing big venues, and don't get me wrong, but those little intimate places where we can really sort of bounce around more. I really enjoy playing those.
Yeah, it seems like there's plenty to look forward to with you guys. So listen, guys, thanks very much for joining us today. And,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I've really enjoyed that. If anybody's out there who hasn't heard Hats Off, Gentlemen is Adequate, then definitely check them out. It's we're going to put all the links below the video in YouTube and also on the podcast as well. So check them out. And guys, we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Andy. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.